be familiar with Ideate BIMLink. It is one of the premier tools for being able to extract data from the Revit model. And in fact, we just had our 10-year anniversary last fall. So this is a product that's been around for years. It's trusted, it's proven, and it is sort of the I would say, sort of industry standard when it comes to extracting information. So a lot of people think about Ideate BIMLink as far as being able to extract parameter data, being able to edit that, and then being able to pull that data or those changes back into the Revit model. And that's great and perfect use of Ideate BIMLink. But there are many situations where we can sort of go beyond that, and you may not be familiar with all of those sort of workflows. So I'd like to highlight just a few today. So again, with Ideate BIMLink beyond data editing, we are providing over 300 sample link definitions. And what we mean by this is, think of a link definition as kind of like a template, basically. It allows you to quickly load up the data from your Revit model, all of the parameter information, and then you could add other parameter information if you have, let's say, shared parameters or project parameters, or you have family parameters that you want to focus on. You could customize any one of these links. But again, these 300 get you started. And we've organized this around discipline, like for instance, architecture, construction, MEP. We also have a whole series of COBie links for the construction sort of tasks and workflows. And then we also have health checks, which I'm going to be focusing on just a little bit, and then project standards, quality control. So it just goes beyond the sort of standard editing of, let's say, you've got mechanical equipment and you wanted to edit the mechanical equipment manufacturing data or something like that. There are many other supported workflows. So here is example number one. And this is the support for health checks using some of the sample content. And so we introduced this actually about a year ago, these health check link definitions, helping you do quality assurance and quality control. And so you can get a general review of your project standards, such as detail naming, family and type, view type, data. You can get quality control of elements such as dimension overrides, whether something is flipped, whether a family is in place, or whether it's a component family. So all of this is available with our health check links. So let's just take a look at this. I'm going to switch over here to Revit, and I'm using the latest version of Revit, at least as we're probably expecting another one here in a month, but right now this is Revit 2021. And if you're unfamiliar with Ideate software, all of the Ideate software tools are available on the Ideate software ribbon panel, right? And so if I come over here and I access Ideate BIMLink, basically this dialog will appear. And by default, and that's why I cleared out, I don't have any links. I don't have any definitions. Think of these as kind of like schedule definitions, if you will. So how would I create a new one? Well, I go over here to new, and here's where I'm talking about the library that's available to me, right? And it's organized by, as I said, discipline or structure links, electrical, mechanical. I'm gonna come over down here to health check. And you'll notice that we've prefaced it with health check dimensions, grids, Ideate, imports, keynote tags, and so forth. A great little trick that you may not be familiar with is if I select using Shift Select, I can highlight all of these health check links and say next, and that's going to create them for me. So when I go over here to one, as an example, HC Ideate, I'm going to look at the properties. It's going to load up the properties that were defined in this particular link definition, right? And in this case, while I'm waiting for it to load, it's actually analyzing all of the categories. This is a multi-category link. So in fact, you can see here multi-category, and you can see all the information sort of from this drop-down list, right? Now, with the categories, in this case, this is it's not a huge model, but for the demonstration purposes, I don't want to export everything. So what I'm going to do is come over here to categories, and you can see all the categories are checked. I'm going to say uncheck all, right? So I've got no categories. And then I can just give you a couple examples. I can come over here to walls and check that, right? And then maybe doors, right? And then how about windows? And we'll do we'll do floors, one more. And so I'm just going to specify those things. Okay, so then I can basically say, all right, this is what I've selected so far. Out of all of the Revit categories, I've only selected doors, floors, walls, and windows, right? So that's going to give me a much smaller list, right? So again, going back to the properties, these are the properties that have been defined for this particular link definition. Now, not only do we include this link definition as part of Ideate BIMLink, we include a sample Excel file called health check. So when I select OK, I'm going to take this one Ideate, HC Ideate, and I'm going to export it. And I'm going to export it to something called health check here. So let's see, Ideate health check right here. So this is, again, this is part, this Excel sample folder will be under the health check folder of delivered links. And I'm going to select save. And so when I do that, it's going to say, hey, there's already a worksheet, right? Like a tab basically called HC Ideate. And I'm going to overwrite that particular worksheet. And so what I would actually do if I'm really doing a complete comprehensive health check, I'm going to be doing this for each one of these. I'm going to go through the same procedure for dimensions, for grids, for the others that are selected here, like what levels, model lines, revision clouds, and so forth. So I'm not going to do all of that. I've already done that, so I'm just going to open up the file here. And so what we have here, I'm going to go over to all these tabs, and in HC Ideate, that's what we just wrote, the raw data from Ideate BIMLink, right? We wrote to this tab called HC-Ideate. So what we're doing with Ideate BIMLink is we can write to multiple tabs, and we're not doing a destructive edit, meaning that any particular macros you have or pivot tables in other tabs are going to be preserved. And in fact, let's go over here to the very front end, and there's a summary. And the summary basically says, well, I've updated the summary information. And in fact, you only exported 67 doors, 7 floors, 318 walls, and 5 windows, right? So it gives me a little overview. So it's only giving me the categories that I selected. Also, there's all of these are basically what we've created as pivot tables, like work set and phasing. It's only looking at the categories that I selected: doors, floors, walls, windows. So it can tell me that I've got 67 doors again, and what work sets are being used. You can see here, I previously had exported some of this stuff. I have imports and links. I have families that could be in place. So there's actually 7 in-place wall families. I've got some generic model usage here. So model line usage. In this case, I need to export this, and this hasn't been updated yet. But you can see all of these are just basically summaries information that is summarized from these other tabs that are written out from Ideate BIMLink. So if you're an Ideate BIMLink customer, you have access to this Ideate health check Excel sample file, as well as all of these links. So a great way to be able to review the information in your model and be able to make changes or edits if you so desire, or if you need to. Sometimes it's just being able to review, like I said, what model lines or detail lines are being used, what views, view naming, and so forth. So nice ability to be able to do that health check. So another example that I like to show is revision management. And Ideate BIMLink has a really nice workflow in regards to revision management. So the way that Revit works is that you can basically have a sheet, and you can have multiple revisions on that sheet. But when you do a revision schedule in Revit, it's only showing you the last or the current revision. So a lot of times people need to have not only the current revision, but multiple revisions as they go back in time, right? So there's no built-in solution to schedule every revision on each sheet. It's just not able to be done in Revit. So what we've done is the ability to look at both revisions, the actual sequence, and the revisions on sheet, and be able to modify that with Ideate BIMLink. And we also have the availability of a sample spreadsheet. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So you can see that you can actually go, and in this particular case, editing multiple sheets at a time is consuming with just default Revit, but we've enhanced this particular workflow. And so we've included this sample, or I should say we can include, meaning you do have to request it, and I'll talk about that in a second, this sample Excel spreadsheet that you can write to with our two link definitions, revisions and revisions on sheets. And it works very similar to what you just saw with the health check, where we're writing to a particular tab, but then there's another tab called DIR, which is Document Issue Records tab, that will update and format the information in this nice matrix format. So, since I mentioned it a couple times, if you are an Ideate existing BIMLink customer, you can send an email to support@ideatesoftware.com to request the sample spreadsheet for the document issue records. So unlike health check that we include in the samples directory, this is one particular workflow that we're asking you to just send us an email, and then we'll send you the data set, because we also have, with that data set, we're sending you a Revit file as an example. We're sending you little video links. So there's and instructions on actually how to sort of to do this particular workflow. But I'd like to highlight that for you today. So let's come over here to back over to Revit. And this time I'm going to go to a different tab here, because I have a different project here. And you'll notice that in this particular case, it's pretty simple, right? I only have two sheets. Or actually, I'm three sheets here, two sheets with viewports. So if we are familiar with our revisions in Revit, I can come over here to View, and I can go over here to my revisions, right? And so here are all my revision sequences. I've got none, I've got some alphanumeric, I've got numeric, and if I wanted to create a new one, that's pretty easy to do. I can actually just say Add, right? And the date is going to be, 03/11/2021, and we'll call it, let's say, for review, just something different, and for review on Microsol. Let's say I'll abbreviate it. So notice that we can specify whether it's a cloud and tag, or whether we want to show none, or just the tag information, or say both. So in this case, I'm just going to keep that, and I'm just going to say OK. Now, if I zoom up on this, you'll see that this particular sheet, A2 sections, already has from before, actually, this addendum and this bid set from quite a while ago, 8 years ago as the date. So if I come over now back to Ideate BIMLink, and I want to show you a couple different things here. I've already created these from our samples, revisions on sheet and revisions, right? So what I can do here, though, is really nice, is if I go to revisions on sheet and I go to the properties, okay, you can see that it's going to show you all of the, in this case, just A1, A2, and A3, and it's going to have a check mark of which particular sequences that they actually have. This one is gray because this one has been issued, RFI number 1, so that's why it's not able to be changed. But this Ideate BIMLink dialog is interactive, and a lot of people aren't familiar with that. That's something that we added a few releases ago. So for instance, for the sections, if I wanted to tick this on, you can see right away, that's why I kind of zoomed into the title block here, is that it's going to show that revision, which is, for review on micro for 3/11/2021, is now part of that particular sheet. I didn't actually create an addendum or a bubble. In this case, I just said that there was a revision on this title block. Now, there's also a fairly short view or a fairly short list of sheets. And I thought I'd kind of mix it up a little bit and show you another item is that with Ideate BIMLink is we can create lots of sheets with title blocks. And I actually already have an Excel list that has all of these sheets. So before I send this out to create a little revision schedule, what I want to do is create new. And I'm going to go over here and I'm typing the word sheets. And it gives me all the things like shape, placeholder, sheets, but I've got this sheets create new. I'm going to say next. And so it defines that, okay, I'm going to have a title block, a sheet number, a sheet name, and whether it appears in the sheet list. So it's pretty simple as far as the actual properties go, right? I'm going to say done. And then I'm going to take that and import. And as I said, I have my sheet list. So I've created in Excel a series of sheets that I now want to populate in this project. So when I do that, it comes back and it says, oh, all these new elements were created, right? And here's the sheet number, the sheet name, and I'm going to say import. And before I hit import, watch over here to the left in the project browser, because you'll see as soon as I hit import, all of those new sheets are now going to be available to me. And the reason I did this is now I've got a more robust sheet list, but it's also nice now when I do this revisions on sheet, you'll see it a little bit with more data. So now that I have the sheets, I could add, if I went over here to revisions on sheet and went back to the properties, now you're going to see I have many more sheets, right? And so as an example, one of the new ones that I created, for instance, this alternate drawings as an example, I could say, well, you know what? I want to have, the Microsol revision that I had. So I'm going to check that on and just say, okay. Now I'm going to take this revisions on sheet, I'm going to export it. And here's where, if you request the sample Excel file, this is what we're going to give to you. It's a macro-enabled workbook. So I have to change it over here to look at a macro-enabled workbook. You can see we're actually on version 9 of it. So here, I select this and say save. And so I'm going to overwrite the existing worksheet that's there called revisions on sheet, and that's fine. That's what I want to do. Now I'm not going to open up the file because I have another one. I did revisions on sheet. I'm now going to click on revisions. This is the actual revision sequence itself, and I'm going to export that as well. And I'm going to change it to a macro-enabled workbook. And I'm going to select on the Ideate dir, select save, and overwrite that. All right. Now that I've done both of those, I can open up the file. And as I open that up, voila, we have our revision sequence. And in fact, let me bring this down a little bit so we can see that. There's, form review on micro, which was, I've set the date as 11 March 21. You can see now that it's, in this particular case, this was the first revision on that sheet of alternate drawings, which is for this one right here, the sequence. But in the case of the one I was showing you with the sections, actually it was number 2 in the sequence. The bid set actually didn't have a numeric value. And in fact, you'll see here under the instructions and the setup, there's detailed information in this worksheet about, okay, if there's no numbering, it's just going to do the double asterisk. Otherwise, it's going to set this up based on the numeric for the revision sequence. So it's quite detailed when it comes into the setup tab, right? The instructions tab, right? Of how you would actually, if you want to change something. And then the two that were coming directly from BIMLink were the revisions on sheet, right? That's this one. So this is the raw data from BIMLink, and the revisions itself, which is the revision sequence, right? And by the way, I could create new revision sequences if I wanted to. Just for fun, the way that you do that is you would type in new here, basically, and then you could specify what the new information is going to be, and then import that back into BIMLink. But then this dir, this is the summary information of all of the sheets that I had as well as the revisions, right? And there I have that schedules. And the reason that's added there and that doesn't have I was playing around with some colorize things here. So what I want to do is come over here and let's just show you that I want to create a thick border around that. And then maybe, let's see if I have a color, I'll do a real light color or something like that. And let's say in this case, I actually don't want the top border, right? And so, I guess in that case, that was light. Here, let's do this. I actually want no border. Right, there we go. And then I'll go and select the whole thing again and just select that I want a thick outside border as an example. So I've defined this, right, as an area. And in fact, I've called this area already. I called this rich, just to see that it highlights. And I'm going to save this. And this isn't BIMLink, but I just wanted to show you that once you have this, you've done this revisions and revisions on sheet, what I can now do is come over here, come down to my schedules, right, which was one of the sheets that I created from Ideate BIMLink. I can go over to Sticky, and I can now link that information in from Excel. So I can say create, and I can do it as an Excel schedule or as an Excel image. And so there are different advantages and disadvantages for each of these methods. But what this one is really nice is that now I'm going to navigate, and unfortunately there's a big long navigation tree here. So let's come over here to my Dropbox folder where I have this information. So we're going to navigate here to my presentation content and my online training classes that we're doing here, beyond traditional data editing, and the one for Microsol. And here we have finally the list. And so what I want to do is, let me see, there it is, Ideate DIR. And instead of the print area, I want to select rich. And so I can give this as a revision list and say OK. And now close that. And now that schedule is available. And if I make changes to it, I can update that schedule very easily. So there you see that, for review on micro, which was on 11 March 21. So you see, and you have complete control of customizing this, as you saw me do with the color, with images. We've done a little Ideate BIMLink logo here, but the company and all that can be very customized. And this is why I was just bringing in multiple sheets, because that, oh, you know what? I realized it doesn't have the schedules. This is a good example, because that rich, which I created earlier, didn't have schedules. So what I'm going to do now is actually update this, and I'm going to call it Sash, and save that. Now, if I come over here to Sticky, I'll just update the information for the that, and I'll say, instead of rich, we want it to be Sash, and say OK. And now I have my schedule list there. So before I defined it only as far as down the furniture plan, now I've defined it down for schedules as well. So again, it's a great way for me to be able to import that information or link that information in and be able to show it in my Revit project. Let's go ahead and fit that. And let's come back here. So another way of, or I should say a workflow of using Ideate BIMLink for going beyond sort of your data editing is for quality assurance and quality control. And I talked a little bit about this at the very beginning, that we have these QA and QC links. So when you think about quality assurance, QA, typically it tends to be type-based information, right? So things like standard line types or materials or object styles or tags. You can kind of see in the list there what we've identified as project standards. And so there are some tools within Revit by default. You might be controlling these what number of types you're using in your project based on your templates, either your project templates or your family templates. You've got view templates that can set these things, obviously object styles, and you've got groups. But those can kind of quickly get out of hand. So Ideate BIMLink gives you the ability to review this information and be able to make changes to it. And then we move on to QC, which typically tends to be what we call instance information or instance properties. So these are things that may be problems that have already occurred. So in Revit, by default, you might review this information based on Revit schedules or maybe even workset visibility or filters. But you'll see under our quality control links, we have a whole series of things that are more instance-based where, again, family naming, groups, whether families, whether you have them in place or whether they're being flipped or mirrored. So all that is basically kind of reviewing the instances of the elements that you have within the project. And then another type of way to sort of review all the information is a quantity takeoff. So that you can, again, just like we saw with doing the multi-category links with the health check, it supports multi-category. You can add any missing additional data like phase and design options, above and beyond what you can do with the Revit schedule. Length, width, height, area, volume, and there's so much more that's part of this particular workflow. And again, just to kind of reiterate the fact that Ideate BIMLink is true multi-category, we're giving you many more categories and selections than what you can achieve within the default Revit multi-category schedule. And you can see there, yeah, available to export. So I wanted to show you, this is also another nice item to review, is that we do have a sample link called QTO that is under our construction link definitions. So in this model, if I go back to Ideate BIMLink here, and we're going to select on, or say new, and maybe I don't know where it is, right? So I've got this ticked, include files and subfolders. I can type in QTO, and it's going to say, oh, there's construction QTO or construction QTO primary option. I'm going to select on that. In this case, it's an instance link because it is like quality, or it is quality control, so similar definition in that it's looking at each instance to review what may or may not be an issue. So in this case, I'm going to say next. And very similar to what I did for the health checks, I'm not going to go through every single category here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say uncheck all, and then we're going to do, how about just walls? And I'll just do 2 here. Let's do floors as an example. We just want to do walls and floors. So now if I say hide unchecked, that's what I have. So the properties that we're looking at here, again, as defined in this particular link definition, are things like the design option, what level it's on, the category, obviously the family name, the length, area. So we've got, and volume. So we've got some information that's coming from there. And you can see that from multi-category, we have the ability to look at coordinates. So if we wanted to have coordinates of a particular item, like if it's a room bounding element, it could be the upper, the box upper right, lower left, or it could be a line if it's a line-based element, and the where it's actually start point and end point, or you've got individual survey points X, Y, and Z. If it's an insertion point of a family, for instance, a mechanical piece of equipment, or maybe even you're inserting hanger locations for mechanical equipment. That's a good point of view, or a good example of using survey points X, Y, and Z. So we can give you that information extracted from the model as well. So I'm going to select done, meaning I'm going to keep the sort of the default construction QTO definitions, and I'm going to export this. And there's a construction QTO worksheet. And again, this is something that we include. So if you're a BIMLink customer, you already have this construction QTO. It's under the construction link definitions. and you're going to say save, and you're going to overwrite that existing worksheet just like we've done for health check, just like we did for revisions, and then we're going to open up the file. And so now when we open up the file, again, very similar, we have the raw data, right? This is all of the instance information that was sent out from Ideate BIMLink, but then we have a pivot table that's the summary, right? And the summary in this case is just going to show me, walls, information, and floors. Those are the only two things that I selected. So it has, what floors are being used, the sum of the area, the sum of the volume is what this particular pivot table has done, and the same thing with the wall information. So as I add other categories to this, I'm going to be getting more into this list. And again, this is completely customizable, but this is available right now with Ideate BIMLink. So I'm going to close that, and I'll close this other worksheet back here in the background as well. So if I go over to new, right, and I just wanted to show you these two, we've talked about health check, right? All the links that are under health check. We've talked about, project standards. These are things that are more type-based to control. And then there's also this quality control, again, where you can see all the information about, even some of the things like revisions and, what revision sequences we've used and so forth. So if we wanted to look at that as an example, revisions, just to see like, well, what revision sequences do we have in this particular project, I can select next, and then it's going to give me a list of all of the revisions for this particular project. Now, this is a different one than I was in earlier. So you're going to see these two that are gray, the in-house, have already been issued. The other ones, 2, 3, and 4, have not been issued yet. So this is the information that's being sent to Excel. So, and of course, if I wanted to add anything, like as an example, if I wanted to add a particular item name, I can move that up in the list. Oh, that's already that link name, and actually maybe the link, if I'm not including linked elements as an example, I could remove that and say, untick this, don't only show me revisions that are in the main model. So now I have the name, the revision sequence, and some other information. So again, all of this is completely customizable. It gives you the link definitions, give you the start, but then you have the ability to customize them on the fly. Okay. So I also wanted to highlight the fact that we can create elements, and I showed you just a quick example of that with the sheets, being able to create new sheets with title blocks, and you actually have the ability to place either, or to create either unplaced sheets, right? So they don't have the title block, they're just placeholder sheets, or you can have, if you define the title block in the Excel file, like, let me go over here and I'll just show you what that looked like. When I went over here to the my sheet list, right? So you see, this is the ID. I'm telling BIMLink to create a new one, which it did. I'm highlighting the title block over here in column B, right? And then I'm giving it a sheet number, a sheet name, and whether it appears in the sheet list or not. So it's pretty simple. If I have this title block in column B, it's going to create an actual sheet. If I do not have the title block, it's going to create a placeholder sheet that then I can, when I create sheets within Revit, I have the ability to select the information over here as far as the placeholder sheet information. And then you can also create new views if you've got the X and Y coordinates of those viewports. You can create those viewports on the sheet itself. You can create revision sequences, as you saw that I was able, or I just showed you that you can type in new and create a new revision sequence. You can create new levels. You can create new types per existing family, and you can actually, some categories, not all categories, but you can create or place elements based on the X and Y and Z coordinates, such as furniture systems, planting, specialty equipment, masses, and generic models. And in fact, I have a little video called Project Setup that's available on our Ideate software website. And if you go to Ideate BIMLink Project Setup, it will show you how you might first create levels, then you might want to create some views, then you want to create sheets that have those views. And so it kind of sets up a sort of cartoon set of how you might create some project setup using Ideate BIMLink. And then I wanted to highlight here, we have a new product called Id8 Automation. And this is the best way to highlight this is to come back over here to BIMLink. And if you remember, when I first started the presentation, I talked about the health checks, right? And I said you're going to have to take HC dimensions and you're going to export it to the health check sample file. You're going to do the same thing for grids. You're going to do the same thing for Ideate as we did in our example. We're going to do the same thing for imports. And you're going to do this, 7 or 8 times, each time exporting. Well, what if there was a way that you didn't have to do that 7 or 8 times manually? You could just set it up and you could have it run through all of these, export it on either one model or multiple models. So if you had like 5 models in your directory, you could do it all at once. And that's Ideate Automation for BIMLink. And so if you've got, or if you have interest in that, you can learn more at our ideatesoftware.com. There's blog, there's actually help files about this as well. But it takes the power of Ideate BIMLink and everything that you saw me do today and basically automates that where you can schedule it to run, let's say at 2 in the morning, so that you could go through and export all of your links, your health check links for a series of models. And then when you get in the morning, it would have all that information in Excel that you could review. So again, it takes the power of Ideate BIMLink and automates it very easily.